Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2015 Global Dialogue on Waste. We're proud to be conducting our discussions consecutively for the third year to disseminate knowledge in waste management. As part of the 2015 Global Dialogue on Waste, we will host a panel discussion every Wednesday until December 16th. Our next panel will be on December 9th, which is next Wednesday, and we'll discuss how islands can manage waste to protect public health and ecosystems. You can learn more about the time and other details of all upcoming panels by following us on social media or by subscribing to our newsletter. We welcome you to join this conversation with your questions and comments. You can use the live chat window on our homepage or tweet to us at BWasteWise. If you're watching this video after its live broadcast, you can find recordings of all our panel discussions on our website, www.wastewise.be. Coming to today's topic, we have Sarah Jane Widdowson from Ricardo Energy and Environment with us. In a way, this panel was inspired by a theme at the International Solid Waste Association's 2015 Congress in Antwerp and Sarah Jane's presentation there. So today we'll start with a presentation by a variant of the same presentation by Sarah Jane, and then we'll informally discuss how social media could be used by waste managers. And later on, we'll also discuss about BWasteWise's very own waste influencers list and some good examples of social media campaigns. So Sarah Jane, over to you. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ranjith, and thank you very much for the invitation to talk to you today and to be with BWasteWise. I'm based in our London office today at Ricardo Energy and Environment. I'm a principal consultant within the team, and I look after our waste operations business, which is actually anything to do with municipalities, so providing support to local authorities and private sector contractors working with local authorities. I'm a big fan of social media and how to really harness the power of social media to progress dialogue on waste and recycling issues. So it's a subject that I'm always absolutely thrilled to be talking about. Now, Ranjith is powering the presentation for me today. Thank you very much, Ranjith. He's also going to be changing the slides for me. So if you hear me keep saying next, that's the reason why. So thank you very much, Ranjith. If we move on to the first slide, Ranjith, if that's okay. Excellent, and we can progress to the second one. That's just a few details about the organisation I work with, Ricardo Energy and Environment. Now we're on to the overview slide. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what the presentation that I'm going to give you is going to be about for the next sort of 15 minutes before we start engaging in the dialogue. So there's an introduction to social media, what it is. Then really I start focusing on why UK local authorities are using it, so UK municipalities, and what are the benefits to them, when it can be used, so which social media platforms to use at which times, top tips, and then I've got quite a few examples to provide and some summary conclusions before we get into the debate. So if you can move to the next slide for me, Ranjith. Excellent. Okay, so are you social? Now, I think by the very if you're listening to this presentation, there's a very good chance that you're actively using lots of social media as it stands. And we are, as a society, becoming incredibly social, which has been facilitated really by new technology. But if you can change slide for me, I've got some fantastic statistics which will talk you through why the age of technology is coming to the fore and why it's so important. But what I wanted to start with was this fantastic quote. It's quite an old quote now. Waste is a communication business, not just a logistics business. And I think this is becoming increasingly relevant. We often deal with waste as a material, as an issue, purely in terms of logistics. Residents produce it, our municipalities and authorities come and collect it. They move it from one place to the next place where it gets reprocessed or treated or disposed of. And it is a continual logistics puzzle. But what we're trying to ask residents and businesses to think about more now is actually treating that waste as a resource. And to do that, we need to communicate why. Why is that waste material so valuable? Why is it important that waste is prevented, reused or recycled? So if you can pop to the next slide for me, Ranjith. So social media. Welcome to the age of technology. Now, I'm sure if I could see our audience face to face and ask them how many mobile phones they've had in their life, there will be lots of people trying to count the number, because I'm sure that many of the audience will have had upward of 3 or 4 or 5 or even 10 or 15 mobile phones already in their lifetime. And I think this just demonstrates how reliant we are on this type of technology now. So some statistics here from the UN. Half of the global population will be using the internet by the end of the year. That's a huge amount of people. 2 billion of those will be located in the developing world, and 7 billion will have mobile device subscriptions globally. 7 billion people. That's incredible, isn't it? Some statistics from the UK. In last year, 38 million adults, that's 76% of adults in Great Britain, access the internet every day. Access is increasing via mobile phones, so we're gradually moving to a lot of smartphone usage to access those internet. And also with Black Friday and Cyber Monday, where hopefully none of your listeners at Be Waste Wise went out and bought things, but I'm sure a huge amount of people did, but more and more goods or services are actually being purchased online. So in Great Britain, 22 million households, so 84% of households had internet access last year. That's, it's absolutely startling, really, the way that we can now access the internet and actually think about what we can do with that. If you can pop to the next slide for me, Ranjith. So what about social media? Some stats about our use of social media. So Facebook remains the default social network for most of adults in the UK who are online. So of that huge percentage that are online, 96%, that's a huge amount, have Facebook accounts and use it. Interestingly, 2 of our top football teams have the biggest fan pages from the UK. But this isn't too far behind in terms of recycling pages as well. So recycling percentages, recycling like 70,000 there. Small amount compared to Man United's page with 66 million likes on there, but we're getting there. Pinterest, 2 million users accessing Pinterest, and 70% of those female. So it's an important thing to think about when you're considering who you're going to target in terms of your social media campaign. Twitter. Now, statistics for Twitter range from around 10 million to 15 million, but the demographics of those users, most users are between 18 and 44 years of age. On LinkedIn, which is the business networking site, there's around 15 million users, including, surprisingly, 5 mermaids and 744 magicians. Then Instagram, which focuses on pictures, no UK statistics on that, but 300 million users worldwide, so a huge amount. And again, a fairly young demographic and also slanted towards the female population. If you can move on to the next slide for me. So why do people use social media? Well, there's lots of different reasons, really. The uniqueness of conversation, being able to communicate with a global audience, really, will allow you to actually find somebody anywhere in the world that has the same interests as you, even if they're incredibly unique interests. The ability to contribute, so particularly one of the functions that I like on Twitter is actually the ability to take part in conversations, to use hashtags to follow trends, etc. To be part of a wider community. There's an element of peer pressure as well, so being able to interact with friends or colleagues or neighbours, etc. Also, because it's becoming increasingly easy to use and access, so we're much more likely to actually write a response on Twitter now, for example, if we have a complaint or an inquiry, than we are to actually pick up the phone to that particular organisation. It's always quite a focus within the media as well, so there is there's an element of that. But also, and I like to think that the main driver really for using social media is actually to be sociable, to take part in that particular conversation. Next slide, please. Okay, so focusing on why UK local authorities or municipalities are using it. Could you move to the next slide for me? So really there are three current drivers within the UK. The current economic climate. So local authorities in the UK are still hit with austerity. They're having to make huge budget cuts and save money. So they're looking for really cost-effective methods of communication. The localism agenda, so ensuring that local people have a say in key decisions, actually utilising social media platforms allows a much wider group of population to input into decision making, to provide their opinions. And also the constant driver, which is actually trying to increase our recycling rate, trying to divert waste from landfill. So three big drivers for the UK at the moment. Next slide. Now, this has led many authorities to actually consider social media, and there's a number of reasons for this in terms of benefits. The first one is actually that the web is cheaper and quicker. Some stats on the slide for you there, but actually web transactions are a lot more cost effective for a local authority. Reach is a very strong benefit for local authorities. So actually it helps to connect with traditionally hard to reach groups. And you can develop these really personal dialogues with different groups in the community. There's also engagement and ownership. So using a social media platform can help to create dialogue and debate. Not just about information giving, it can actually be localized to a particular issue in a particular area. And also incorporating social media within your wider communications portfolio allows you to provide a dynamic conversation. So you can tailor messaging to your audience. Next slide, please. So when can it be used? Next slide. In terms of UK local authorities, really at any stage of the recycling scheme, so from right at the planning stage during consultation through to scheme rollout, to providing information, responding to feedback, raising awareness, so getting residents to recycle more, for example, and then actually through to reviewing performance, so reviewing your current services, determining how you take the next step, and moving that round again into your strategy, so through the full cycle there. Next slide. So what to use and when? Well, really what to use and when depends on what your local authority communications team are comfortable with, and also what sort of resource demands you have within your local authority team. In order for conversations to remain dynamic, you have to be able to respond in a fairly short time frame. So that's an important consideration for local authorities there. But as I said before, really, social media platforms can be used at any stage in the cycle of local authority collections, treatment and disposal. Next slide. Top tips for using social media. So what really should an authority consider? Well, actually, it goes back to the same principles for any sort of communications campaign. What are the aims for your campaign? What are you trying to achieve? What resources do you have available? So what sort of budget do you have for that particular campaign? Do you have the resources to be interactive? And also, what are your corporate communication guidelines? So many local authorities or even businesses have fairly strict rules on the tone in which they communicate, the manner, the language that's used. And also these departments might not be used to operating through social media. So lots of conversation needs to be had with your corporate comms team initially. Next slide, thanks. Other things to consider, usage protocols, so thinking about acceptability, using the same guidelines as corporate communications to any sort of resident or customer. Monitoring and evaluation, so essential for any sort of communications campaign that you do. Lots of fantastic tools now that you can use to monitor whether your messaging is right. Google Analytics provides some fantastic tools that are free to use. And also this sort of feedback will allow you to inform future plans as well, to monitor effectiveness and to tailor your campaign. Next slide. Taking the time to monitor is really important, as with any communications campaign, because actually, unless you monitor and really review what you're doing, you don't know whether the time and the energy spent actually delivering that communications was worthwhile. So make sure that you plan that within your communications team. Next slide, please. Okay, some examples now, and I just wanted to show a few examples of how different local authorities in the UK are using social media and also harnessing the power of technology, particularly mobile technology. So this on the screen at the moment is an app for Recycle for Southampton. This allows users to look at things like identify local bring sites for recycling. There's a collection day calendar as well. There's also a report it function as well, so that you can use your mobile phone to take a photo of graffiti or fly tipping, and that will send it immediately to the local authority to look at. There's also guidance on this about what materials you can recycle and where. Next slide. Recycle for Southend take a multi-channel approach, so they're actually using a number of different platforms to provide similar messaging. So this is just an example of their Twitter page and also their Facebook page as well. So Twitter for very short, snappy updates. Facebook is providing lots more detail, pictures within that as well. So more information and FAQs really for users. Next page. Waste prevention. So the Waste and Resources Action Programme in the UK have a fantastic campaign called Love Food, Hate Waste, which is about food waste prevention. And they have a great website, but they also have a Twitter feed as well, where they provide lots of top tips, information about campaigns, and some of their campaign materials. So well worth following. Next page. Street cleansing. So this app has been around for quite a while, the Love Clean Streets app, which was started by Lewisham, I think. It's essentially a reporting tool and relies on the fact that lots of residents have a mobile phone in their pocket. So if they see something that they would like to report, they can take a quick snap and then send it to the local authority. And the image on the slide at the moment shows the before shot with lots of sofas that have been dumped, and then the after shot, which was taken by the street cleansing crew. Next slide, please. Okay, now we haven't got the video for this one, but this is a plastics campaign which was done by Suffolk, the Suffolk Waste Partnership. If you follow the link on the leaflet, there's a fantastic video which takes you through all different types of plastics that you can recycle. So this was published on social media. There's also a quick response code on the bottom of the leaflet as well that allows people to go to the website. Thank you. Next one. So this has been a fairly recent campaign which focused really on transient population within Greater Manchester and particularly students. So Greater Manchester Waste Disposal Authority had quite a lot of funding from the EU Life Plus project, and one of the campaigns that they ran was really focused on students to try and get them to recycle more. So they did things like recycle selfies. So if you as a student went to recycle something, you could take a quick selfie shot and then post it on the website and you could win prizes. But there was also an interactive game on the website, again, which showed you what to recycle. Excuse me. Just in time, the conclusions. Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, Ranjith? Excellent. So that's been an incredibly quick gallop through, I think, of social media and its use at the moment with UK local authorities. Some of the conclusions from that, really, I think engaging the public on waste and recycling issues is absolutely essential and chimes really well with the three drivers that I talked about. The fact that UK local authorities have to save money, the fact that they want their residents to take ownership of waste and recycling issues and to actively participate in the service, and the fact that they've got to meet the EU landfill directive requirements, so recycle more, divert waste from landfill. So social media is an incredibly beneficial addition to any local authority's overall communication strategy, but it remains one specific element of that, and it should be taken in the round. So local authorities may still want to do leaflets or collection calendars, etc. Social media, like any form of communications, must be used effectively so that you get the best out of it. So the same sort of communication strategy rules apply. Plan your strategy, think about your resourcing, and ensure that you're using the right tools for the right job. And one of the benefits of social media is that actually it's applicable worldwide. So if you do want to take your campaign nationally or internationally, why not use a social media platform? Next slide. Fantastic. Okay, we're at the end. So that was, as I said, a very whistle-stop tour there, I should say, of some insights into social media and how it's being used by UK local authorities. Back to you, Ranjith.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was a very good presentation, and I know it's a variant of what we had at this one. For listeners, I mean, for us at BWise, the most important aspect of social media and mobiles is that it connects people all around the world like never before. I mean, if we just look at the history of human population here worldwide, there was never a tool like internet, of course, and then social media, where we could have two-way conversations with people from all around the world, get their opinions, and then move ahead. And even though we're discussing social media a little late in the waste management sector, the reason we wanted to have this conversation is because still in our sector in waste management, many communications are still one way. It's just publishing information and for people to read them, and nothing more happening there. And which is the reason we wanted to have this conversation, so that we could have more dialogues on waste. It relates to our global dialogue on waste, where it's a two-way conversation between people who are looking for solutions and also people who can help them find those solutions, as opposed to general publishing of articles and then people just reading them and then kind of ending it there. And you can also see what we're doing on social media by looking at our waste influencers list. We've been publishing it. We published in 2014, 2015, and we'll also be doing it for the in future too, and every year in future. And here we're trying to understand which people and organizations are using social media effectively to communicate about their work and also get opinions back. So what we do is we look at people who are engaging as opposed to just publishing one-way communications, and we actually put them in the influencers list. And which is why many people, when they find themselves in the influencers list, they're surprised. I mean, they're like, oh, we don't have so many user followers, but how did we get here? Then that's when we explain that it's not just about that, but it's also about engagement. Yeah. And Sarah Jane, what do you think about people who say, well, even in your presentation, I saw that most of the people are young, most of the demographics are young. So what's your response to people who say that social media is only for the younger generation, and what's your response?
I think Well, the statistics that I provided at the start show that actually for a lot of those social media platforms, the users are kind of below 50, but that doesn't mean that actually there's an older generation using these particular applications. I think it's about regular use, but also you have to remember that, the internet is still a fairly, it seems like it's been around forever, but actually it's only a couple of decades now. So we're still taking time to adapt to that. I think those sort of insights in terms of which demographics use those particular platforms is useful when you're planning communications. But for me, it's actually using social media can solve one of those big issues that you have, particularly as a business or a local authority, which is about trying to contact those hard to reach groups, which can a lot of the time be kind of students and young people below 30 as well. So I think see it as I said, social media is just one part of the toolkit, really. So it'll help you engage those particular audience, but you need to also consider more traditional forms of communication as well.
Right. So like we say in the waste management business, there is no silver bullet to this problem. So social media is just another tool which could help you.
Yeah, a very effective tool, and I think will become increasingly important in the future. But yes, another tool.
Right. And what do you think about publications in the waste management sector using social media? I mean, I myself haven't seen much interactions on the web, unless it's a large organization like Guardian, which understands this, but many other publications do not really take it that seriously.
I think it's I suppose you have to think about what the purpose of those publications are. I mean, a lot of, if you're talking about some of our waste management press, I think they are starting to use social media more and more. So particularly things like CIWM, the Chartered Institute of Waste Management, is taking steps forward to engage its readership and its membership. Some of the other waste management press, their purpose is really to communicate news. So they're pushing information out quite a lot. They are starting to really use social media to gain insights, to gain quotes, to gain feedback. And I think that'll happen more and more, but I always like to look at the BBC really as the first point of call and think about how they use social media effectively. So if you look at their news website, a lot of the news articles are one dimension, if you like. So it's information provision. When you get an article which might be on a controversial topic or a local event, you'll see that they're always asking for feedback, asking for more information. There's lots of comments sections on there. So very similar, as you said, to the Guardian there. So I think, again, it's really about when you use social media, it's really thinking about what is your aim? Why are you using this particular platform? Because I think it's absolutely valid to use it as a method of pushing information out, as long as that's your objective.
Right. And talking about businesses and organizations using social media, earlier we were discussing about, the anger organization can become a target of on social media. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, on how honesty is required in communicating your message?
Definitely. I think there are some really good examples in a general big business that have been the target of fairly angry responses and messagings to different
and they get very personal too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things about social media is that it can often be an anonymous platform, if you like, a way of pushing out your anger without it actually being associated with your name. I think from a sustainability perspective, large organizations, and small organizations, need to really think about their CSR objectives, so their corporate social responsibility objectives. Are they being true to themselves? I think our residents and the public are incredibly savvy now, so they understand where there's, a certain element of greenwashing, and they will respond and they'll let that organisation know that they need to buck up their ideas, really. There's also a lot of feedback. I mean, if you look at some of the, I suppose, the environmental scandals that have been happening recently, so Volkswagen, for example, with air emissions, there's a lot of anger and venting online about it. That company, they damage their trust, really. That they've lost the trust of a lot of their customers, and they need to do a lot of work to get that back.
Right, and the reason we're bringing this up is because this could be just as applicable to any organization in the waste management sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So
right.
Providing clear and accurate information is absolutely essential. No greenwashing. And particularly we've seen this recently, particularly with local authorities, when within the UK at the moment, we're living in a time of austerity, so actually budgets are incredibly tight. Local authorities in particular are having to make really difficult decisions about their services. And this could be about cutting services or changing opening hours, for example, or reconfiguring their services. Now, sometimes these are fairly unpalatable decisions. But if they communicate that in an open, transparent manner to their residents, if they run consultations, if they engage with their residents and actually spell out the reasons why, you often find that those residents are a lot more accepting of it and will often take ownership of the issue and try to think about ways to solve these things. Now, this has been quite apparent with household waste recycling centres. So these are mini sites where residents can take some of their larger goods like old fridges, sofas, for example, but also other recyclable materials. Now, these can be fairly costly for local authorities to run, and some authorities have made the decision to reduce opening times or to close sites completely. And this can be quite contentious, but if you consult early and consult comprehensively with your residents, let them know the reasons why, then you often find that they come on side.
And it's not just, I think they can also, as part of the consultation process, use surveys to, understand what people's opinions or, tastes are. And I think I've seen many companies and many organizations using this for, if there is a management, if the management is unable to take a decision between two options, they just put a survey out to the customers or to the people they are serving, and then they have a clear, yes or no to either decisions.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic way of doing things. One of my favorites.
Sorry, if I can add, and the best part about this is the speed at which they get the feedback. And so yeah, just you can go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, no. I think speed is a really important point. You can make very quick decisions, get quick feedback as well, and it's great for the user. We all have mobile phones in our pocket. We can fire off very quick responses there. What I was going to say is one of my favourite methods of consultation that I've seen recently was with one of our local authorities, Slough Borough Council. So on their website, they've actually put a budget balancing tool, which allows residents to log in, and they can decide whether for certain services they increase the budget or decrease the budget, what impacts that will have, and whether they can then balance the books afterwards. So Slough have been very open and said, this is our budget for the next year. How would you spend it? And I think the whole method of working through every service and seeing the ramifications, the impacts of changes in increasing and decreasing budgets have, I think it's fantastic, really engaging for residents, and gives them great insight into actually what that money is being spent of to effectively operate the local authority.
That's actually an amazing example. But I have multiple questions on hearing about this. One of them is, of course, an example like this kind of levels the field for democracy in democracies.
Yes.
But how do they vet who's from that council, or if people do they have login
Yes,
credentials?
you have to put in your postcode. So you have to provide some of your details to demonstrate that you're actually living in the area. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, interesting. I think that's required, just as opposed to just opening
Absolutely.
it to everyone.
Yeah.
Right, great. And talking about social media, I mean, we've discussed about how it can be localized, but I think we can also talk about some examples from abroad and using social media for the COP21. And do you have any thoughts on that? I know you're interested in that.
Yes, absolutely. I think I find it very exciting actually that the latest, COP21 is now in the time of such prominent social media usage, because we're able to follow conversations by using hashtags. We're able to promote causes, and we're able to, find out very quickly what's happening and why. So from a waste management perspective, I think harnessing social media is actually pushing some of our causes forward. So I know, for example, ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association, are taking will be at the Congress this week and are talking about their recent reports, the global outlook on waste management, and trying to prioritise waste management. And also Waste Aid UK has been, publicising, why it's so important to consider waste management and recycling as part of the overall climate management framework. And actually using, one of the things that I particularly like about Twitter is actually you can engage with anybody from around the world. So you can follow conversations and then identify people that you would like to engage with, to push the message out to, or to, retweet their message as well. So yeah, I've been glued to Twitter this week.
Right, and I think Waste Aid also has a hashtag, Put Waste Right, right?
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So really, we're trying to push waste up the agenda and make sure that it's considered, because it seems to, it's never really at the forefront of minds, unfortunately. So.
Right, and it's I think what they're trying to do, which is increase the importance of put it on a better, or increase the priority of waste management is extremely important. And that is one of the, not one of the, actually, that's the central focus for our next year's Global Dialogues on Waste, which is
fantastic.
What is the role of waste management in improving human well-being overall, in multiple ways. And I know Mike Webster of Waste Aid tweeting or maybe sharing it on LinkedIn, I don't remember, about how multiple goals of the 2015 goals are met through waste management. So
the Sustainable Development Indicators.
Right. And another thing that I have to mention is, at least for me, most of my news comes from Twitter and LinkedIn, and sometimes through Facebook. And is that the same with you? And is that the same with many people these days?
Oh, that's a good question. I think within the waste management community, I'm seeing more and more people using particularly Twitter and LinkedIn to share stories, to engage in debate about certain issues. And that's something I find very interesting. You're able to get direct opinions about different policies that have been put forward, different decisions that have been made by businesses or organizations. So, and also in real time as well. So there's that, for me, there's that sense that you're right at the heart of the story as soon as it's published. I can only see it increasing really from a professional perspective, particularly the use of Twitter and LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
I think Facebook, for me personally, I think Facebook is still more of a personal approach. Although you get some good organisation pages on there that will talk about, provide more detail on stories, more pictures, etc.
I think for me, Facebook is a way to understand other people's issues, what they feel strongly about. Because when we're talking about waste management, we have to be able to, align our messages according to other people's issues, their individual personal issues. And I also wanted you to talk a little bit about the Clean India campaign, which was majorly, which was it was a social media campaign to begin with, with selfies and lots of tweets.
Yes, no, absolutely. And it started with President Modi actually having Prime Minister. Apologies, Prime Minister.
We
Modi
have the UK system.
He was actually on the street with a broom sweeping up, and this was the whole message for the campaign about, taking care of your local area, taking care of the place where you live, promoting cleanliness. So that went absolutely viral, and then lots of different superstars and really prominent figures.
He actually nominated people from different walks of life to join the campaign. So it wasn't just putting it out there, but he actually nominated some people to take it ahead. So, which was an interesting approach.
I think it's a for me, it linked a little bit with some of the success of the ALS campaign, which was the Ice Bucket Challenge, where you took the challenge, recorded it, and then nominated other people to take part and raise money. So it's a fantastic hook there, because actually you're hooking in other people. You're almost putting them on the spot, really. They've got to take part in the challenge to and then they can nominate other people. So there's a cascading of the message as well as actually hooking them into it. So I think it has been very successful in India in terms of raising the profile of the issue, trying to get people involved. I think there's been a lot of discussion about how effective it's been on the ground. So has it actually changed behaviour? And I think it has changed behaviour to an extent, but I think it's more about that awareness raising. So, he's definitely put waste, cleanliness issues on the map and has highlighted their importance there. So.
He definitely did. At least sanitation is a much more important issue. After Mahatma Gandhi, no other leader actually spoke about sanitation. So it's actually him. But other than that, people still debate about change on the ground. But as far as it comes to me, I do see multiple youth organizations and multiple community organizations organizing and doing work on the ground with this message, the encouragement that they get. But before we end the conversation, we have only two more minutes, and I think we can discuss for a really long time on this. But I also wanted to mention LinkedIn Pulse, because we were discussing about LinkedIn earlier, and I see a surge in people using the LinkedIn publishing as a publishing platform. When it started, I think it was just one person publishing every few weeks, but now I see multiple posts in a day. People are actually using that to get their information out. Any thoughts on that?
For me, that's a really interesting one, because people have always been able to express their thoughts through blogs, but actually I think having it within the LinkedIn site, which is basically a professional networking site, actually provides that sort of commentary with, from my perspective, a little bit more credibility almost. So it's definitely set within that kind of professional opinion context. So yeah, I think it will grow and grow. Very interesting.
Great. And just before we end this conversation, do you have any suggestions or examples on in what ways municipal authorities can use social media, for some specific tasks or help that they could get?
Oh, that's a good one. I think so. A very quick win would be using social media platforms in terms of pushing out information. So putting information out there in terms of service changes, emergency works, things like in the winter, gritting. So we had a thing called Gritter Twitter almost, which updated residents about which roads had been prepared for snowfall, for example. So that for me is a very quick and easy way in to social media. Once you've got the hang of it, it's then really thinking about the communications planning. So why are you using social media to engage in conversation? How are you going to use it? And what are the aims of your campaign or the aims of your engagement, really? So I think you can take it in terms of step-by-step progress.
Right. Okay, great. So I think with that, we'll end the discussion today, unless you have any final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts or conclusions? Or can we consider the previous ones as the final thoughts?
Apart from, use social media, I think is the,
okay.
Dip your toe in, explore it, have a look what's out there.
As short as 144 characters. Yes. That's good. Absolutely. So, all right, to the listeners, thank you very much for joining us today. And our next discussion will be next Wednesday, and that will be about how islands, where the environment and the kind of resources that are available are totally different, how islands can manage their waste. So join us next Wednesday, and we'll see you soon. Have a good night. Good evening. Bye.
Bye.